they're starting cutting into the social sphere, pensions, salaries, cutting on healthcare, on all the normal things. We've seen this spectacular, disastrous infrastructure, shocking events blowing up. The pipes, the water pipes, sewage pipes, everywhere is blowing up. People have no water, no heating. You have dams which are collapsing because they're made up of nothing, just corruption. So in terms of social infrastructure and the basic housing and all that is all in horrible conditions because all the money is going now to the front line. And
Well, I've been intrigued in your thoughts because yesterday I read reports to say that the Russians had nominated Medvedev as the head of the negotiating team, but had deliberately, and still today are deliberately not saying whether Putin's going to turn up. But do you think by putting his name in the ring as the leader, they're making an interesting statement?
they're making, I mean, if this is true, Philip, this is going to be even a better TV, as they say. Well, it's intriguing. Donald Trump famously doesn't drink, and Dmitry Medvedev infamously does drink. And so it would be an interesting encounter after a long flight from Moscow to Istanbul. What will happen to the deputy head of the National Security Council? I think Medvedev is still holding that position. Uh, Medvedev is probably a slightly more serious figure than Medinsky, who was the Minister of Culture, who was leading the previous conversations in Istanbul in 2022. That is correct. But he's even more full-mouthed than Lavrov, right? The foreign minister of Russia, who is famously talking about Nazis all the time. So I think Medvedev is kind of up the notch a little on that leg. So if they're bringing Lavrov and Medvedev, that is going to be just a shout match, and that's obviously not a serious negotiation.
Yeah, but Medvedev, seems to keep loving to threaten nuclear reaction to everything that's going on, and his relationship with Putin, he's one of his puppies.
Correct, and also a horrible family situation as well. So maybe that's leads to drinking. I don't know. But it's obviously I'll be extremely surprised, Philip, if they send Medvedev. That is kind of throwing a gauntlet to the West.
So the initial indicators are Turkey is it might start something that will lead to other things, but we're not going to get anything groundbreaking out of any negotiations tomorrow. Is that what you're thinking?
Well, yes. However, I mean, we still need to leave a little bit of chance if the Russian elites, who are obviously wanting a ceasefire, who want this to stop, if they really press now Putin to do something. So there is a little chance that from different corners of the Kremlin, people will come up and say, "Well, listen, you need to go, and maybe we can do a bit of a deal," because the situation on the one hand is not catastrophic, but it's not great. It's not looking great. They've run out of money. The normal money. Okay, they got a lot of other money. They've got yuan, you've got gold, you have billions and billions of Russian savings, which they can tap into. But from normal kind of budget, they're now running effectively a budget deficit 4 times faster than they should have. They've spent the budget, but they spent the budget already in the first 3 months, which they're supposed to spend until the end of the year. The Russian sovereign wealth fund is empty of cash. So effectively, now they're in a moment of drastic measures. Whether they're going to tap into the Russian savings, whether they're going to declare some kind of economic emergency. So this is a moment when actually things are starting to look quite serious. And probably, the economic and business elites would say, well, this is, doesn't look too good now. Maybe a good time to stop. But obviously, it never stopped Putin before. So I'm sure there is a lot of negotiations in the Kremlin right now.
But we keep hearing about people saying that the Russian economy is in a bad position, and Russia's economy is tiny compared to even that of the EU. The EU's 100 times stronger than Russia. But Russia seems to keep being able to afford your huge military capability and what it's doing. How do you think they're managing to sustain these sort of operations from an economic perspective? And again, from an economic position, what's the reality in Russia today? And then what's the reality in Ukraine? Because Ukraine must be feeling a lot of pain as well, even though it's getting support from the likes of the EU and the United States. But it can't be easy.
So the Russians spent the first 3 years of developing a quite expensive uh, volunteering scheme for people to join up their army and to fight in Ukraine, with really extremely high bonuses of 30, 40, 50,000 pounds up front, plus quite high level of payments if you're wounded or dead, and hence that's been a major incentive for people to join up. I think yesterday, 2 days before, President Putin said that 65,000 people are joining up every month. If you combine, if you multiply that 12 times, they will only run out of three armies over the last 3 years. So the question, where where are they ending up? All these 65,000 a month. About 22% of people in Russia gained. They're richer now than they were 3 years ago. So there is a significant proportion of population who are actually not enjoying but benefiting from the war. They're not just the soldiers and their wives and their families, but also, of course, the military industrial complex and the generals and also people supplying them, but also the Russian elite who are under sanctions and under the embargo from Western goods are enjoying incredible monopoly profits, right? You can charge whatever you want because there is no competition at all. And so 20%, 22% of people are quite happy with this, which is a significant amount of people. On the other hand, of course, they're starting cutting into the social sphere, pensions, salaries, cutting on healthcare, on all the normal things. We've seen this spectacular, disastrous infrastructure, shocking events blowing up. The pipes, the water pipes, sewage pipes everywhere is blowing up. People have no water, no heating. You have dams which are collapsing because they're made up of nothing, just corruption. So in terms of social infrastructure and the basic housing and all that is all in horrible conditions, because all the money is going now to the front line. And I think currently they are building more and more inflationary pressures, because effectively, as they run out of money, they're going to print the money, to put it bluntly, and that will also put the inflation up. And you can see all this prices from the Russian supermarkets is crazy prices, even for the Russian produced goods. Potatoes up, 70%. The basic things are extremely expensive. Eggs, so butter, right? Butter thieves are rampant. Do not steal sausages, because we catch 3 people every day. I saw a supermarket sign in somewhere in Voronezh. So on the one hand, you have people benefiting. On the other hand, everything is quite creaking up. So I think this is exactly the moment when he might go for the last hooray, kind of let's go until October. Let's throw in everything, and then we'll see what happens. Although I would say that is quite a risky strategy, and probably people around Putin will say, well, maybe we shouldn't risk the last, everything. We're already running out of weapons. People are driving motorcycles, donkeys, horses, running around on foot. So you know, interesting times.
Yeah, very interesting times, and at the heart of Russian politics, is the corrupt nature of the oligarch network that underpins everything. But going back to old Soviet days, that same oligarch network underpinned politics inside Ukraine, and one of the things that has come out since President Zelensky came in, he came in on an anti-corruption ticket and started to try and deal with all of the issues that there were there. But we're still seeing the accusations coming out of pro-Kremlin brigades, whether they be Moscow-based or St. Petersburg-based, or whether they be Washington-based or elsewhere, that are suggesting that a lot of the Western money that is being given to Ukraine is actually being abused by different corrupt networks. Has President Zelensky managed to get a lot of the corruption at what was at the core of Ukrainian government, quite a few years ago? Has he managed to deal with that, and is he continuing to deal with it to bring Ukraine back, away from old Soviet style criminal underpinning through to more Western style? Different way of doing it. I'll not say there isn't corruption in Western politics, because, as you know well, of course there is in all politics, but it's different. It seems to be more acceptable.
Yes, more acceptable to issue a Bitcoin with your own name just before you become a president, or your wife's name, or it's more acceptable to tell your friends you're going to impose tariffs, and then they trade on stock, and then you can see crazy stock market movements and people are getting rich, as Donald Trump said. Lots of his friends became extremely rich over the last couple of months. Not to mention, of course, gifts of 400 million of a fantastic jet plane from Qatar, which is going directly to Donald Trump's private possession after he finishes the office. So yes, it is.
From a security perspective, I can never see that being used as Air Force One. Oh my goodness! Yeah, I reckon it would cost $50 to $100 million just to run the security checks on it, and even that's probably an underestimate.
Yeah, so then you put Pete Hegseth into it. That'll be another interesting story. Well, President Zelensky came in with the anti-oligarch actual platform, to be precise, and then he had a law that they named people who own more than 1 million hryvnia actually to be oligarchs. So actually, any rich person is declared as an oligarch, and that means that any rich person cannot own TV station, radio station, or newspaper. That was the first move, and then they tried to actually curtail all the other networks of power from the so-called oligarchs. And the two largest people in Ukraine, whom I'm not going to name because everybody knows who they are, they've been very, very helpful in the since the last 3 years. Both the System Capital Management Company and also Interpipe Company have, and their and their owners have been quite spending quite a lot of money, put it bluntly, on the war effort. A lot of donations, billions and billions, and very effective things they've done. So the two remaining most powerful people in Ukraine, apart from obviously politicians, have been very patriotic and helping the war effort. Not everybody has done that, I need to say, and a lot of them are quiet or run away. So it's situation is not as black and white as critics portray. Obviously, there are some mundane corruption things happening every day. However, we need to say that after 3 years of allegations of armaments been sold and of billions been stolen, not a single Stinger or HIMARS or even Javelin has been found in any conflict anywhere else. And not a single penny of American money has been stolen because Americans put a general inspector just walking around Kiev just looking for this. So there's been quite a lot of Western pressure on checking that the money is spent very well. And to be honest with you, Philip, the Western money comes to cover pensions and salaries, and all the Ukrainian budget, all the Ukrainian money comes to the war effort. So it's actually quite a clear division. So Ukrainians can only spend money that they have. To be another way around, the Western money can never be spent on the war, and the Ukrainian money then has to be spent on the war. So Ukrainian budget consists of two things: the war and non-war. The non-war comes from US, UK, EU, and other Japan and other member states, and that's your stuff you need to pay. And I must say, my mother is still getting pension, my father getting pension, and they never complained. So those money somehow do come to the targeted audiences, and soldiers on the front line do still receive stuff that they need to receive, salaries, etc., and payments. So it looks like from the outputs of this system, outputs have been delivered.
You've been watching Frontline with me, Philip Ingram. If you'd like to be amongst the first to get exclusive content, please subscribe to Times Radio membership at the link below. You can also listen to Times Radio for the latest updates on global affairs or read about them at thetimes.com. Thank you.